You grew up with the idea of God above you, a creator, a judge, a savior. But what if that concept isn't just absent in Buddhism, but impossible? You practice compassion, karma, rebirth, and you never invoke a divine father. You chant to no deity. You bow to no creator. So the question is not, where is God in Buddhism? It's, why is the idea of God a barrier to awakening? I'm SilentFlame, and today we face the first of 8 contradictions in Buddhist thought. Why an entire path of liberation can thrive without God, and what that means for seekers of truth. What do we mean by God? In Western religions, God often means a supreme personal being, omnipotent, omniscient, compassionate, and just. Key attributes of theistic God: creator of all phenomena, moral lawgiver and judge, object of prayer and devotion, source of grace and salvation. But in Buddhism, none of these features apply. We encounter no first cause, no divine legislator, no eternal soul to be saved. So is Buddhism atheistic or agnostic? Neither. Buddhism is simply unconcerned with a creator. It focuses on dukkha, its origin, cessation, and the path. The Buddha's silence on God. According to the Pali Canon, after his awakening, the Buddha remained silent when asked metaphysical questions. Is the world eternal or not? Does a Tathagata exist after death? Is there a creator? These were the unanswerable questions, Kalama Sutta style, because they don't lead to liberation. The parable of the poisoned arrow. Why debate the maker when you've been shot? Remove the arrow first, then discuss. This isn't indifference. It's pragmatic wisdom. In the centuries after the Buddha's passing, Buddhist communities across India and beyond wrestled with questions of gods and spirits. Yet in every corner, no school elevated a single, omnipotent creator above the law of karma and samsara. Theravada's reserved reverence. In Sri Lankan and Southeast Asian texts, devas appear frequently, celestial beings capable of great power and longevity. Yet they are still bound by suffering and rebirth. They pay homage to the Buddha, seeking advice or boons, but never claim he is their creator. Monks chant protective verses to appease devas. Yet these gods remain shackled by the same cycles of birth and death. A deva may grant rain or protection, but it cannot end its own dukkha. Sarvastivada and the Abhidharma, cosmos, northern Buddhist traditions mapped out elaborate heavens, Triyastrimsha, Yama, Tusita, Nirmanarati, and more. Each realm represents a temporary state of mind and being. None is everlasting. Karma propels souls upward, but that ascent is only a postponement of rebirth elsewhere. These texts emphasize that even gods, powerful as they may be, lack omniscience. They bicker, they err, they seek counsel from arhats and bodhisattvas. Their authority is phenomenal, not absolute. Theravada versus other Nikayas. When the Buddha descended from Tavatimsa heaven after teaching his mother, devas celebrated his realization, but they did so as grateful guests, not as worshipful children of a creator. That background celebration underscores how gods fit within Buddhism. They honor humanity's potential to transcend even divine realms. Theravada's approach to deva homage is pragmatic. Monks recite suttas not to prop up a pantheon, but to remind themselves and lay supporters that even deities depend on right conduct. Lay people, believing in devas, offer food and robes to monks. The merit transfer may benefit the devas, but it always underscores that liberation is earned, not granted by divine whim. Mahayana's celestial bodhisattvas, not creators. As Buddhism radiated into Central Asia, China, Korea, and Japan, it encountered local gods and spirits. Rather than reject them, Mahayana absorbed them, but recast each as an expression of awakened mind, not as a transcendent creator. Bodhisattva pantheon, Avalokiteshvara, compassion, Manjushri, wisdom, and Ksitigarbha, vow of liberation, became focal points for devotion. Devotees call upon Avalokiteshvara in times of crisis, visualizing the thousand-armed form reaching out to all beings. Yet this deity is understood as a vow, the unwavering intention to relieve suffering, manifested vividly through imagination and devotion. Manjushri's sword cuts through ignorance, but this sword is a skillful means, a symbol of insight, not a literal divine weapon. Pure lands and Buddha fields. Amitabha's pure land, Sukhavat, is portrayed as a realm free of suffering, created through the power of Amitabha's boundless vow. Yet this creation is not ex nihilo. It is a metaphor for the power of faith and visualization. Practitioners generate that land through recitation, meditation, and virtuous conduct, revealing it within consciousness rather than calling forth an external universe. Wrathful protectors and Dakinis figures like Mahakala and Vajrapani take on fierce forms to dismantle obstacles. Their terrifying aspect reminds us that compassion can don terror to save beings trapped in ignorance. Dakins, emanations of wisdom energy, are sometimes equated with local goddesses, yet they represent transformations of awakened mind, not independent deities who govern creation. Creator versus manifestation. In the Lankavatara and Lotus Sutras, celestial Buddhas and Bodhisattvas shower blessings, but always as the expression of ultimate reality's emptiness. There is no separate, uncreated God. There is only the dynamic play of wisdom energy that any practitioner can awaken. Mahayana's inclusion of countless celestial figures arises from upaya, skillful means. Texts deliberately adapt local beliefs, translating gods into bodhisattvas to meet people where they are. This strategic assimilation fosters universality without contradicting core Buddhist principles. No creator, no soul holder, no eternal judge. From the earliest Pali Suttas to the vast Mahayana canon, Buddhist authors don't merely sideline the idea of a creator. Many texts explicitly dismantle it as a misguided obsession. The Tevijja Suta's warning. In the Dagga Nikaya's Tevijja Sutta, two Brahmin scholars boast of their knowledge of Brahma, the highest God. The Buddha's response is devastatingly direct. True knowledge, Tevijja, comes not from blind faith in deities, but from direct insight into suffering, its origin, and its cessation. He challenges them. Which meditation brings you release? Which practice frees you from dukkha? Their answers, rooted in ritual, fall short. The Brahmajala Sutta's deconstruction. This sutta catalogues 62 speculative views about self and world, many affirming an eternal creator. The Buddha labels these views avijja, ignorance, observing that debating a static God sows attachment, dogma, and conflict. Only through seeing the arising and passing of phenomena can one transcend endless philosophizing about origins. Nagarjuna's Mulamadhyamaka Karika. Centuries later, Nagarjuna employs rigorous logic to show that a creator would imply an unconditioned cause. Yet all things, by definition, arise from conditions. He writes, if all things arose from a creator, from what did the creator arise? This vicious regress undercuts any notion of an absolutely first cause. For Nagarjuna, positing God only deepens samsara by encouraging eternalist clinging. Buddhist critiques of theism are not mere atheistic assertions, but profound soteriological interventions. They show that speculating about a creator diverts energy from the practical path. Every time one debates the existence of God, one reinforces egoistic clinging to views, precisely the obstacle Buddhism seeks to remove. Modern scholarship and the Buddha's silence. In the last 2 centuries, Western and Asian scholars alike have puzzled over why the historical Buddha never declared himself a theist, or even an atheist, but left the question of God unanswered. Scholarly theories on the silence. Some historians argue that early Buddhism arose in a context flush with Vedic ritual, so the Buddha's refusal to endorse Brahminical cosmology was a radical cultural rebellion. Others see it as a strategic pedagogy. By neither affirming nor denying God, the Buddha avoided alienating seekers on superficial grounds, focusing instead on transformation of mind. A third camp suggests pragmatism. The Buddha dealt in causes and effects perceptible in direct experience. God, as a transcendent hypothesis, lay beyond the scope of liberating insight. Contemporary voices. Jnanavira Thera, a modern Theravadan contemplative, writes in his notes on Dhamma that invoking God reifies the self, for only the self can pray. True practice, he argues, demands cutting the very roots of selfhood, so no deity can be petitioned. Bhikkhu Bodhi emphasizes the psychological. Belief in a personal God can become a crutch, undermining personal responsibility for karma and recycling helplessness. Robert Thurman notes that early Buddhist reticence preserved the teaching's universality, allowing it to spread beyond Indian polytheism to cultures lacking a creator God concept. Modern scholarship not only explains why the Buddha stayed silent, it highlights how that silence functions as an enduring teaching tool. By refusing to validate or refute God, the Dharma compels each practitioner to test the liberating power of practice directly, rather than resting in theological comfort. In Buddhism, we honor devas and bodhisattvas, but we don't address them as creators. Their veneration is profoundly different from praying to a God who stands above and decides our fate. Devotion as expression, not supplication. Devotees recite the name of Avalokiteshvara to cultivate compassion within themselves, not to enlist an external savior. Bowing to Amitabha Buddha is a gesture of aligning one's mind with the boundless vow that generated the Pure Land, rather than begging for divine intervention. Offerings, flowers, incense, lamps symbolize impermanence and one's own aspiration, mirrors of inner transformation, rather than gifts to a landlord of souls. The absent petition. In Christian liturgy, petition is central. Forgive us our trespasses. Give us this day our daily bread. In Buddhist ritual, the focus shifts, taking refuge in the triple gem. I go to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and making merit, not requesting favours. The laity may dedicate merit to ancestors or devas, but this is an act of transference. May the wholesome energy benefit them, not an expectation that a deity will alter cosmic law. Singing verses invoking authority. Chanting the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, is itself an insight practice, dissolving barriers to understanding. Chanting a theistic hymn, holy, 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 etc., reinforces the existence of an omnipotent author, an authority figure permanently above. Buddhist chants invite you to awaken your own potential. Theistic hymns orient you toward dependence on a transcendent other. When we venerate a bodhisattva, we wake the seed of compassion in ourselves. When we worship a creator God, we defer responsibility for our own awakening to an external agent. This boundary shapes entire communities. Monasteries don't feud over doctrinal authority because no one claims ultimate power. Lay organizations offer relief based on communal effort, not on divine blessing alone. Even in ceremonies invoking ancestral spirits, the underlying attitude remains one of interconnected practice, not of supplication to an omnipotent sovereign. When faith becomes a crutch, and how Buddhism avoids it, blind faith in a creator can become a psychological safety net, but it may also entangle us deeper in samsara. The crutch of divine favor. Believers often attribute successes and failures to God's will, relieving personal accountability. This creates passivity. If it's meant to be, God will guide me, stalling ethical action and self-examination. Karma, by contrast, emphasizes cause and effect. Every intention and action shapes future experience. No divine override possible. Fanaticism versus inquiry. Theistic systems sometimes sanction violence in God's name. Fight heretics, convert or die. Buddhist texts consistently condemn violence, emphasizing right intention. Harm in another creates negative karma for the perpetrator with no excuse of divine mandate. Faith in Buddhism is rooted in experiential verification, ehipassiko, come and see, not in blind acceptance of revealed truth. The danger of absolute certainty. Belief in a perfect God can foster judgment. Those who suffer must be sinners. Buddhists cultivate doubt as a starting point. The Kalama Sutta invites critical inquiry, rejecting teachings that don't withstand personal investigation. This keeps the path open, adaptive, and humane, rather than rigid and exclusionary. Divine crutches ask us to lean. The Dharma trains us to walk. When faith builds thrones, practice builds bridges. In therapeutic terms, Buddhism functions as a self-empowerment system. It provides tools and meditation, precepts, ethics, to directly transform mind and behavior. Theistic structures often rely on intercession, sacraments, clergy, divine promises to mediate transformation. Buddhism invites you to situate the catalyst of change squarely within your own awareness, fostering resilient autonomy rather than dependence. In the heart of Buddhist practice lies a radical shift, from placing faith in an external deity to cultivating trust in one's own direct experience. Ehipassiko, come and see. The Buddha invited skeptics to test his teachings through personal investigation rather than blind belief. Ehipassiko, come and see. This term appears in the Pali Canon as an open challenge. Each practitioner becomes their own arbiter of truth. In contrast, a theistic faith often begins and ends with scripture or revelation, authority external to lived reality. Meditation as empirical inquiry. When you sit in zazen or vipassana, you observe the arising and passing of thoughts, sensations, emotions. You note, that feeling arises, that feeling fades. Over time, you verify impermanence, non-self, and interdependence within your own awareness, thus replacing doctrinal faith with empirical insight. Precepts as Ethical Experiment 5. Precepts: no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, intoxication. Function like ethical hypotheses. You adopt them, observe their effects on your mind and community, and adjust. There is no divine reward promised. The benefit or harm is measured in the quality of your heart and relationships. Direct versus delegated efficacy. In theistic worship, one delegates change to God's will. God will guide me. In Buddhism, every action you take, every breath, every thought, directly shapes your path. You become the agent of your own liberation, not a supplicant. This shift from external faith to internal trust transforms the very nature of spiritual discipline. Doubt is not an obstacle, but a tool. Inquiry replaces dogma. Uncertainty becomes fertile ground for insight. Over time, practitioners form what modern psychology calls self-efficacy, the confidence that one's own efforts, not divine favor, produce real transformation. Psychological self-reliance in Buddhism. Buddhism fosters a resilient self-reliance, not the egoic self, but a mature confidence in one's capacity to understand and heal one's own mind. The middle way of effort. Too much effort leads to burnout. Too little leads to complacency. The Buddha taught right effort as part of the Eightfold Path. Balanced diligence that cultivates wholesome states and abandons unwholesome ones. This discipline builds inner trust. You observe, you correct, you refine. Much like a scientist running experiments on the mind. No salvation outside practice. In many theistic traditions, salvation can be granted by grace, sometimes requiring only belief or ritual. Buddhism emphasizes that liberation arises only through practice. The Metta Sutta teaches, one by one, with careful awareness, let go of ill will. This is the path to peace. It's a step-by-step manual, not a contract with a deity. Cognitive behavioral roots. Modern mindfulness-based cognitive therapy traces its methods to ancient Buddhist practices. Patients learn to observe thoughts as events, not truths, thus loosening the grip of anxiety, depression, addiction. This therapeutic evidence underscores Buddhism's claim. Transformation doesn't require divine intervention, only skillful attention. Psychologically, Buddhist self-reliance parallels Viktor Frankl's will to meaning and Albert Ellis's rational emotive behavior therapy. Both systems place the locus of control within the individual, transforming suffering through active engagement rather than passive reliance on external forces. In modern times, countless practitioners have stepped away from theistic upbringing only to discover a deeper, more resilient faith in their own insight. Their stories illuminate why Buddhism's non-theistic path offers lasting liberation. The scientist who became a monk doctor. Suresh, once a devout Hindu, pursued particle physics to explain the divine order. Yet amid academic accolades, he faced existential dread. On a retreat, he experienced ehipassiko, observing impermanence in his own mind. He realized science and Dharma share a method, empirical examination. Today, as a Theravada monk, he teaches that relinquishing a creator God didn't destroy his sense of wonder. It redirected it inward to the miracle of awareness itself. The former missionary in Thailand, Maria, once led evangelical services until burnout and doubt overwhelmed her. She questioned, if a loving God existed, why so much suffering? Encountering Buddhism, she found no all-powerful deity to appease, but tools to heal her own mind. Through mindfulness and compassion practice, she reclaimed agency over her life. Now a lay teacher, she shares how the shift from petitionary prayer to silent meditation transformed despair into grounded equanimity. The Zen master raised atheists born into a secular family. Thomas had never believed in any God. Yet his early Zen practice felt hollow until he embraced the paradox of no self while deeply feeling connection. His breakthrough came not by invoking emptiness as negation, but by leaning into the felt sense of life, every breath, every heartbeat as sacred. He teaches, true reverence arises not by honoring a separate Lord, but by honoring life's mystery as it unfolds in each moment. These narratives underscore a central theme. Discarding belief in a personal God is not an act of nihilism, but of reclamation, of wonder, compassion, and ethical responsibility placed squarely on one's own shoulders. In each story, liberation deepens precisely because there's no transcendent, divine safety net. Cultural adaptations, Buddhism without God, across the globe. From Japan to Brazil, communities adopt Buddhism's core exactly because it frees them from reliance on an external deity, allowing the Dharma to integrate organically into diverse cultural soils. Japan, Shinto Buddhist syncretism. In Japan, Shinto spirits, kami, coexist with Buddhist practice, not as supreme creators, but as local kami honored alongside ancestors. Japanese temples blend rituals. No ultimate god governs, yet festivals celebrate transient beauty, hanami, reflecting impermanence and interbeing, not divine decree. Here, Buddhism's non-theistic stance fosters harmony. People engage in ancestor veneration while acknowledging that all phenomena, including kami, arise and dissolve. Tibetan Bon Buddhism dialogue. The indigenous Bon religion features creator-like deities. When Buddhism entered Tibet, these figures were reinterpreted as protector spirits, dharmapalas. A creator god never displaced the Buddha's teachings. Instead, local gods became guardians ensuring ethical conduct. Monastic debates in Lhasa emphasize that dharmapalas serve the path, but they do not alter karmic law, underscoring Buddhism's consistent refusal of a supreme creator entity. Western secular sanghas. In Europe and North America, many sanghas form around secular mindfulness, explicitly rejecting God language. Practitioners report less spiritual bypassing, no theological conflicts, yet find robust community and psychological support. Studies show secular Sangha members experience reduced anxiety and depression, evidence that a non-theistic form of Buddhism can thrive in pluralistic, post-religious societies. Across cultures, Buddhism's adaptability hinges on its non-theistic core. Rather than imposing a creator doctrine, it offers a universal method, mindful inquiry, and ethical action that seamlessly integrates with local beliefs or stands alone, proving that a path to awakening need not rest on divine foundation. We've mapped the terrain from Pali suttas dismantling creator myths through Mahayana's skillful deities to modern stories of practitioners who discovered their own inner authority. Now, we weave these threads into a coherent fabric of understanding. God as concept versus reality. Theists posit a supreme architect. Buddhism shows that every notion of a singular first cause collapses under scrutiny. Conditioned arising permits no unconditioned creator. Psychologically, belief in God often masks fear of meaninglessness. Buddhism invites us to stare into that void rather than hide behind divine projections. Faith transformed into inquiry. The shift from devotional dependence, God will save me, to empirical self-investigation. I observe, I verify, I awaken, reorients faith into a living question. What works, rather than assent to articles of belief? This cultivates beginner's mind, where doubt is embraced as a tool for discovery, not condemned as lack of piety. Devotion as own inner spark. Veneration of bodhisattvas and Buddhas functions as a mirror, reflecting our latent qualities. We bow not to a cosmic landlord, but to the promise within ourselves. Compassion, wisdom, equanimity. Psychologically, this harnesses archetypal energy without outsourcing responsibility to an external figure. Our own mind becomes the altar. Ethical autonomy over divine mandate. Theism can engender more passivity, God's will be done. Buddhism replaces this with karma's law of cause and effect. Every thought, word, and deed matters. We become architects of our own liberation, not beneficiaries of grace. This shift deepens accountability and fosters genuine resilience. In modern psychology, this mirrors internal versus external locus of control. Studies show that individuals with an internal locus who believe they can influence outcomes exhibit greater well-being and lower anxiety. Buddhism's non-theistic core operationalizes an internal locus at the deepest level. The locus of awakening lives in direct experience, not in imagined divine favor. Can true faith exist without God? It's time to confront a final paradox. Faith without a theistic object. Can such faith sustain a life of practice, meaning, and moral courage? Redefining faith. Traditional faith, assent to unseen phenomena, trust in divine promises. Buddhist faith, suttas, confidence in the three jewels, Buddha, the awakened, Dharma, the path, Sangha, the community, as experiential realities, not theological constructs. Sustaining practice. Through sutta arises when benefits are felt. Clarity, calm, compassion. It grows through practice, not through doctrinal subscription. This creates a virtuous cycle. Practice, insight, renewed faith, deeper practice. No divine intervention necessary. Examples of non-theistic faith. Monastic novices who, without any God story, commit decades to meditation, commanded by nothing but the conviction that peace is possible. Lay practitioners who dedicate merit for the welfare of all beings, guided by compassion's impulse rather than promise of heavenly reward. Facing existential angst without divine solace. Without belief in a comforting afterlife or divine rescuer, Buddhists often confront death, loss, and uncertainty head-on, transforming anxiety into urgency for practice. This can be terrifying, yet it yields a profound resilience. We learn to find solace not in promises, but in moment-to-moment presence. Existential philosophers from Kierkegaard to Sartre grappled with God-shaped holes. Buddhism acknowledges that hole and invites us to experience its shape directly. In that raw, unmediated meeting with groundlessness, we discover a different anchor, clear awareness itself. We've journeyed from the Buddha's silent parables to modern testimonies of self-reliance. We've seen devas as fellow travelers, bodhisattvas as mirrors of our own compassion, and pure lands as reflections of inner aspiration. We've dismantled creator myths in ancient suttas, understood the psychological cost of divine dependence, and rediscovered faith as a living inquiry. And now, standing at the threshold of completion, one question remains. Can we truly live a life of deep faith, unwavering meaning, and moral courage without invoking a creator God? Yes. Redefining the sacred from object to process. In Buddhism, the sacred is not a distant being, but the process of awakening. Every breath, every insight, every act of kindness becomes a ritual, a sacred ceremony. From sanctuary to Sangha, our refuge shifts from a celestial temple to the human community, the Sangha. Here, faith is buttressed by fellow practitioners, not by sacred texts alone. From petition to practice, we no longer petition the heavens, we petition the heart. Meditation, ethical conduct, and compassion become our prayers, and we witness their fruits firsthand. This redefinition honors the depth of human potential without outsourcing our liberation. It turns the path into a practice of living sanctity, moment by moment. The paradox of faith and doubt. Embracing uncertainty. True faith in Buddhism, thrives on doubt. The Kalama Sutta's invitation, do not go upon what has been acquired by repeated hearing, but when you know for yourselves, establishes doubt as the crucible of conviction, doubt as doorway. Doubt compels investigation. Investigation yields insight. Insight deepens faith. This cyclical dance is more vibrant than any static belief in a God who stands beyond question. Faith without blindness. Here, faith does not blind us to suffering. It illumines our capacity to engage with it. We step into life's storm not because we believe in divine rescue, but because we believe in our own capacity to respond wisely. Moral agency and the weight of choice, karma, over grace. In theistic systems, grace can absolve without transformation. In Buddhism, every intention imprints the mind. There is no erasing without honest effort. Responsibility as liberation. Knowing that our choices shape our future worlds grants true freedom. We cannot abdicate moral agency to a deity. We embrace it as the very vehicle of awakening. Compassion as commitment. When we act compassionately, we do not please a God. We enact the truth of interdependence, binding ourselves in solidarity with all beings, living the non-theistic miracle. Presence as proof. We witness miracles not in cosmic interventions, but in transformed hearts. An addict's first sober hour, a war survivor's first kind gesture, a child's first laugh after trauma. These are the miracles of the path. Wonder without worship. We marvel at star-filled skies, at the birth of a child, at the smile of a stranger, not because a God ordained them, but because life itself, in its impermanence and interbeing, is enough to inspire awe. Mystery as invitation. The absence of a creator does not close the door to mystery. On the contrary, groundlessness invites us to explore without map and to celebrate the ineffable in every unfolding moment. Call to practice. Anchoring faith in action. If you leave this video with one commitment, let it be this. Experiment with ehipasiko. Test every claim in your own heart. Meditate, observe, verify. Let your experience be the foundation of your faith. Cultivate saddha. Tend to your confidence in the triple gem with daily practice. Let every act of kindness, every moment of clarity, reinforce your commitment. Embodied inquiry. Question your assumptions about God, self, and world. But let questions guide you deeper into practice, not back into dogma. Radical responsibility. Embrace karma. Own your choices. See each intention as a seed planting the future of yourself and the world. Shareable faith. Invite others to come and see. Share your struggles and successes. Build a community grounded not in doctrine, but in shared exploration. You don't need a God to find God's qualities within you. You don't need a creator to create compassion in the world. You don't need a judge to see the justice of your actions unfold. The path is here, breathing in your lungs, beating in your heart. And every step you take in honesty, every moment you practice compassion, brings heaven and earth together. So let go of the search for a divine author. Become the story instead. Walk the path of one who knows. The miracle lies not in invoking a God, but in awakening the Buddha within. I'm SilentFlame, and I invite you, turn inward. Test for yourself. Awaken your own light, and let it shine.